focus right now is on the Cardinals. The Combine is a grand opportunity to get a gauge of some of the guys that the Suns, good Lord. Some of the
Freudian
guys,
slip.
some sort of Freudian. Some guys that the Cardinals can be looking at in the pre-draft process. And not just the ideas that some of the national people think the Cardinals could look at. It's the Cardinals getting a hands-on look at some of the guys that they could potentially draft in April.
Yeah, and obviously we know about their needs. It's on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they can use a couple more playmakers on the offensive end. But really what they need is some back-end help. They need a corner, and then they need some upfront help, and they need an edge rusher.
You think they need corner?
Yeah.
Why is that? I'm curious.
They need consistency at corner. If they can get a lockdown corner with the 16th pick, they got to go. They got to get it. I don't think Sean Murphy Bunting is a number one corner in this league.
Well, how do you feel about Max Melton and Star Thomas the 5th?
Right? But I just don't know about them.
Okay. No, that's fine. This is what this platform is for, is entitlement to opinion. I just don't think I've heard the cornerback conversation. Not that I disagree with the idea that an extra corner would be very helpful, but I thought Max made tremendous strides this year, essentially filling right into that other opposite slot or even just the slot corner spot. Starling Thomas has been kind of a just diamond in the rough find for this group. He's not perfect, but he's certainly getting better. And then we do have to consider, too, Elijah Jones, who was a rookie that drafted in the 3rd round, did not really see the field at all this past season. He could easily play into those plans. You don't want to just give up on those guys after 1 year's time.
What about another linebacker? Go back.
Oh.
Go back to the well.
I don't want to have to think about that right now.
Well, how about an outside linebacker?
Okay, now you've got me. Edge rusher is very clearly a favorite need for a lot of people. I'm sure the Cardinals are very interested in getting an edge rusher. I can tell you this, a lot of the national people are very interested in the Cardinals, at least getting somebody on that defensive front four. Our mock draft tracker right now on ArizonaSports.com, which is presented by YRefi. Thank you to the people at YRefi for sponsoring ArizonaSports.com. Our updated mock draft tracker as of today, February 24th, we're just going to look at the top 5 guys. We don't need to go super deep dive into each of them individually, but there's a trend, and I want to see if you notice, Jeremy. I know you already do, but anyway. James Pierce, edge rusher from Tennessee. 15 of the mocks that we have compiled have James Pierce from Tennessee going at number 16. Jalen Walker, edge from Georgia, 10 of the mocks that we have found. Kenneth Grant, defensive lineman out of Michigan, another 10 mocks. Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon, 8 mocks. And then Shamar Stewart, defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, in 7 mocks. What's the trend?
3 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams.
Fair enough. But what's the other trend?
Oh, they're all edge / defensive line guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, they need help up front.
Trench guys. You can't go wrong with trench guys in the draft.
Yeah.
In general.
So how does this work, right? What happens if the Cardinals go out? I almost did the Suns thing that you just
Look at you. See, it's not so easy.
What happens if the Cardinals go out in free agency, or if they go out and trade for an edge guy? Like free agency is coming up, obviously. What happens then? How does this change? How does this change what the Cardinals do, right? Does it change what all these mock drafts are saying? Because if you go down the list a little bit more on these mock drafts, they got guard, tackle, wide receiver, tackle. There's a trend there too.
They're starting to flip to the offensive side of the ball.
Correct.
But I think I stand in the opinion of if they go out and they acquire an edge rusher via trade or free agency, they will have one more edge rusher than they had going into free agency, and that is 0, quite frankly. They have B.J. Ojulari, who missed the entire season due to injury. They really like what he can do. They're hoping he can do that. Zaven Collins has rotated in and out on the edge rusher spot. He was their leading sack getter, but it was, 5.5 sacks, I think it was the leading sack getter on the edge.
Darius Robinson?
In general.
Inside guy?
I would feel more comfortable if they went full gluttony with this as opposed to just, hey, we got our one guy, we're good. So, yes, maybe some of the mocks will change because of that, but I don't know if they're going to change all that much. I think, if anything, this event this weekend is going to change more mocks than what we're seeing right now.
Well, look at what the Eagles just did, right? How many guys on the defensive line did they need? They needed all of them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a bunch of those guys that they have, obviously they drafted, but they also traded for some. They also brought in some guys in free agency. Hassan Reddick wasn't on this team this year, but a couple of years ago he was on the Eagles, and they still had a lot of depth at that position.
Right. Their Bryce Huff free agency addition didn't turn out as planned. He was benched for the Super Bowl.
To your point, yeah. I think depth will absolutely help this team, even if they go out and trade for, fingers crossed, Myles Garrett.
So you are leaning trade, and obviously trade has been a talking point in terms of how the Cardinals could get better. Monty Ossenfort, the general manager of the Cardinals, was with Bickley and Murata on Friday, and he was asked if it makes sense for the team to give up quality draft capital in order to get a talented, proven individual.
I think that really depends on the situation. It depends on the player. It depends on the cost. But I think we will, I think we've shown that we're not averse to trading picks for players. We'll look into every avenue that makes sense and helps to improve our team. And then you just have to make that decision. You have to make that decision, as with anything. Hey, do the resources of that trade and that player is going to cost? That's going to affect building other areas of the team. And so in some instances, that's going to be worth it. Other instances, it's going to affect the other part of the team too much. And so absolutely, we're going to look into every avenue to improve our roster. And if the right situation presents itself, we won't shy away from striking.
I'm interested to see this week if that tone changes for Monty. If we were to talk to him again after this week, after he sees some of these guys, these edge rushers, these defensive tackles, defensive linemen in general, if he were to change his mind and say, man, this class is deep at the defensive line position, we should not trade out of our pick to get someone and have to spend so much money after trading for that person to keep them here.
Fair. They also don't have a ton of this year draft capital. I think they only have 5 picks spread out through the 3 days. So if they want to make a trade with some of the draft assets they have, they would have to stretch into the next year, I would imagine. And getting after a guy like a Myles Garrett, for example, because he's the one that's requested a trade. He's the one that we're alluding to, obviously. He would easily command a couple, if not maybe a third, first-round pick with just the value that he is right now, with what he will bring to a defense and what he's continued to bring defenses in Cleveland, I should say.
That's what makes this week so pivotal in the NFL offseason, because you're able to see, here are our needs. Is this draft deep at our needs? And if not, then you go figure it out in free agency / trades.
Or you just have the benefit of having, 10 picks that they had last year, and they just took a whole mess of guys, and a lot of them contributed in very valuable ways. It's not just the draft, but because this is a draft conversation, there's in-house free agents that I'm sure they would love to bring back, some that can help them at various positions. I know offensive line is something that they're very thin at right now in terms of those who are actually on the roster. And I heard Wolf talking today. He's infatuated with Tyler Booker, who is the offensive lineman out of Alabama.
What's another Booker in town? That's all he needs.
We need more Bookers. The point being is that there are other avenues that they can go, but right now the heavy lean is obviously defensive, because the Cardinals probably need a defender more than anything else that they need right now. They seem pretty set in other areas.